Story 1. That is going to take a lot of work. We need to eliminate constant profit-driven media and reintroduce the fairness doctrine. Story 2. Our politicians have to stop encouraging it. That's not going to happen because right now they get elected for being in the right political party as opposed to actually doing anything beneficial for the voter. Story 3. We need a significant event, similar to that of Watchmen, where we face an invasion or perceive an invasion, so we can unite against a common enemy instead of focusing on our minor differences. Story 4. Having more than two options allows for better decision-making. When there are only two options, Party A pursues its agenda, and then Party B counters and follows its own agenda, leading to a continual back-and-forth situation. Story 5. The us versus them mentality, sometimes called tribalism, is not a new phenomenon in human societies. In fact, it may be the foundation of all human societies. Tribalism evolved as a survival mechanism. When faced with the unknown, our brains default to a simple rule: trust your group and fear the outsider. This is a fast and efficient heuristic, helpful when avoiding danger in the wild, but not so effective when navigating complex social or political issues. The antidote is curiosity. When you seek out new information or deeper context behind your beliefs, you gain the ability to act outside the influence of groupthink. You begin to see individuals instead of enemies and nuance instead of absolutes. This perspective allows you to tailor your reactions to fit the situation and better understand the underlying cause and effect relationships driving the events around you. Understanding does not necessarily mean agreeing. It simply means refusing to let fear and oversimplification dictate your thinking. If you truly comprehend how someone perceives things, you are much less likely to view them as a demon intent on causing harm. However, it is essential to recognize that just because you understand someone does not guarantee they will understand you. The relationship is not always reciprocal. People have a significant capacity to inflict harm on others without any understanding of their perspective. It is commendable to seek understanding of differing views, but be aware that they might not reciprocate the courtesy. If they regard you as an enemy, you must recognize your limits and be prepared to defend yourself. Story 6. Ban algorithms. They are designed to fill your mind with extreme negative opinions about the opposing side while reinforcing your views, regardless of how illogical they may be. Story 7. You cannot. It's not just in America. Everyone is like this. If we could all overcome our sense of tribalism and recognize the other side as individuals trying to solve the same problem in different ways, we could achieve so much more. However, it is a foolish hope, as humans will never completely rise above their sense of tribalism and will always find reasons to hate one another. Story 8. When things get difficult, people begin to awaken. I just don't know when that will be or what it will look like. Story 9. There are thousands of fake accounts on Reddit and other social media platforms. These individuals are known as astroturfers. In Russia and elsewhere, there are large buildings filled with people who work full-time to create fake accounts that spread hate, propaganda, and harass those who disagree with their paid agenda. I would prioritize addressing these individuals before tackling other issues. Story 10. You don't and shouldn't. We just have to realize that they are billionaires, not other poor people who are different. Story 11. 1. Undo Citizens United. 2. Reduce news programming to scheduled times and actual news, not cable entertainment shows pretending to be news. 3. We must stop discussing the problems and start focusing on solutions. If you aren't part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Story 12. By splitting into different countries, we are too different from each other and too geographically separated to ever truly be united. The federal system is beyond repair. Story 13. You have to make everyone part of US. But that's socialism, so it would never work. Give everyone access to the same education and the same healthcare options. Provide everyone with universal basic income with protection against price gouging. Eliminate super PACs and instill term limits to unite the country. We can say something cheesy like, putting us in the United States. Story 14. By addressing the issue, education would significantly impact the toxic individuals in society who perpetuate the us versus them mentality. Understanding the realities of the situation, the importance of diverse groups, their history, and distinguishing right from wrong would resolve many problems. There is a reason why those in power attempt to undermine schools, restrict access to literature, and limit tuition reimbursement and forgiveness. Widespread education could fundamentally change everything. Story 15. We are jingoistic manifest destiny cowboys. It's in our DNA. Even when the pendulum swings from nationalistic conservative leadership to globalist liberal leadership, I don't see those traits changing. We really enjoy chanting USA, USA, USA. Story 16. It has been done successfully many times throughout history. Rome and Carthage, India and Pakistan, Aryans and Semites, Maori and Moriori, Homo sapiens and Homo neanderthalensis, Jacob and Amalek, Eastern Romans and Samaria, Hans and Jez, Tamerlane and non-Sunnis, among others. The problem is the American legal system and its constitution. Addressing that would need to be the first step. Story 17. It's not just the United States. The whole world is embracing the idea that I am me over here, and you are you over there, and we are separate from each other and our shared environment. Self-referential reasoning is often given the highest credibility. This is nothing short of delusion. Western society is likely an instance where this is emphasized, but it's very much a global phenomenon. Story 18. Every country has an us versus them mentality, and that is unlikely to change. It is not just an American phenomenon. Some countries interact more amicably with others, while some behave in ways that merely serve to enhance their own image. Ultimately, every country must prioritize its own interests. Story 19. Unironically, many on the far right and far left would argue that we need to eliminate the other side. Many of the leftists here on Reddit are making that exact case. I am conservative, but I don't want liberals to be completely destroyed. There always needs to be an opposition party to prevent excesses or poor governance. Right now, my side has won, and I am allowed to enjoy our victory. One day, Democrats will win back the White House. Story 20. We need to make us the 99.9% of Americans who the game is rigged against, and them the greedy individuals who rigged the game. Then, Team Us needs to rewrite some rules. Story 21. Unfortunately, I think it's going to take a major catastrophe like a war or depression that forces Americans to work together to survive. Otherwise, there is just too much incentive for politicians and media commentators to promote fear and division. I think the last time we really had a sense of national unity was during World War II. It happened briefly after September 11th and during the first few months of COVID-19, but people quickly retreated back into their partisan camps. Maybe if we could somehow break out of the two-party system and every election didn't feel like an existential crisis for whichever side lost, we might be able to step back and actually communicate with each other. However, the parties seem so entrenched that it's hard to imagine that happening. I hope we figure it out because the current course is not working. Story 22. If people on both sides stopped treating politics like a religious cult and remembered how to agree to disagree. Story 23. Nuclear holocaust where everyone is killed. It is literally the only way. There will always be an us versus them mentality. It is just human nature. It exists at the street level and in every facet of society. What the United States has, and what is sadly rising in other countries, is toxic tribalism. Story 24. It won't. This issue has been around for a very long time. We fought a civil war over it. The us versus them mentality is occasionally smoothed over when we have a common enemy, such as in World War I, World War II, Vietnam, or Afghanistan. However, in times of peace, we remember centuries-old grievances. Story 25. Space photos of Earth. There are no borders. There is only us. I've only ever fought someone when I was forced to. Story 26. Discuss issues rather than individuals, and let cultural matters be determined by cultural dialogue rather than government intervention. Story 27. I don't think anything could change the situation because the problem isn't really a US versus them mentality. People have lost faith in the system, and in their minds, nothing will ever change that. Many of these individuals are very frustrated. A government and an economy are only as strong as the belief that people have in them. Now, these beliefs are causing them to attack the system, and I don't know how you can change that. Just my opinion. Story 28. Not sure it's possible. Mostly because it's not current. It's always been there. At no point have there not been at least two factions at each other's throats. Federalists, Whigs, segregationists, the Tea Party, activists, supporters of the 99%. There's always some grouping of views that irritates a different group. And no, we are not at some all-time low. There was a whole civil war at one point, after all, and we are nowhere near that divided. Story 29. My estimate is that 20% of the population is extreme, with 10% on the left and 10% on the right. They should be pushed back into the background. We need a moderate independent to unite us. Story 30. A valid approach would be to take individuals who have made statements that do not stand up to academic and scientific scrutiny, and then reduce their ability to influence the future. Story 31. We have experienced an attack on our nation similar to September 11th. I do not believe there is anything positive that could result from it. Story 32. When your president tells you that deporting fellow Americans to a foreign death camp is acceptable because they have different opinions, it is time to reinforce the Constitution. Story 33. Stop trying to get the government to manage culture. Let the cultural landscape be an organic process that accurately reflects the people. Story 34. To be fair, it's only half of us versus them. The rational half wants nothing to do with the current division and hate spreading. Story 35. That attitude must be limited to certain parts of the United States. I am completely unfamiliar with such an attitude, as I originally come from the Midwest. However, it is a college town, and I have lived near Washington, D.C. for approximately 26 years. Story 36. Right now, there is a divide between the managerial class and the general public. The reason for the heightened tension is that the managerial class has displayed arrogance, lack of effectiveness, and significant failures. Reducing the size of government to its essential functions will address many of these issues. Story 37. How did Germany resolve its issues? It seems we are just repeating history, so I hope we can learn from past solutions and improve upon them for the future. Story 38. It would require repealing freedom of the press and shutting down major networks such as CNN, Fox, MSNBC, ABC, and NBC. It would also make it illegal to provide opinion-based news. Then, all the news networks would need to restart with completely new staff who are to report only the news without slants, panels, or opinions, focusing solely on factual reporting. Guaranteed, 90% of the polarization would diminish since these networks drive division for profit. Story 39. We need to take action against corporations manipulating politics, restore unions, overturn right-to-work laws, revive our antitrust laws, and eliminate corporate monopolies. Story 40. Bring back the fairness doctrine for major news outlets and regulate the distribution of propaganda on social media. Criminalize and arrest every individual in Trump's cabinet who does not run for office in Russia in 2026 or sooner. Declare the Make America Great Again movement a domestic terrorist organization. Repeal the Citizens United Supreme Court decision. Ban insider trading in Congress. Deport Elon Musk and ban Twitter. Story 41. You cannot remove competition from capitalism. If people were raised to be cooperative instead of competitive, it would be a significant step in the right direction. It is simple. We are all part of the human condition and should help each other make the best of it, instead of outcompeting one another to hoard excess. Story 42. Becoming a benevolent superpower means helping others instead of causing destruction. It involves providing support and resources rather than exploiting nations for their oil or minerals. It is important to avoid racism and promote equality. However, situations can become complicated when an adversary attempts to seize control of a strategically significant country. In such cases, intervention may be necessary to maintain a position of power, as losing a key location could lead to significant economic repercussions. Overall, adhering to these principles will lead to positive outcomes. Story 43. Frankly, the last time it happened, President George W. Bush squandered the opportunity. Right after September 11, 2001, the entire population was ready to support each other and go to war with the perpetrators. Rather than pursue the real culprits in Saudi Arabia, he fabricated falsehoods about Iraq and Afghanistan and weapons of mass destruction. There were flags in nearly every yard and on most vehicles. People were angry, enlistments surged to near post-Pearl Harbor levels. We, as citizens, were ready, willing, and able to hold those truly responsible accountable. But money, and more specifically petroleum products, got in the way. Story 44. By taking control everywhere while ensuring that the indigenous people are not disregarded. Story 45. Increased emphasis on mental health care and self-care. I firmly believe everyone is frustrated with something that clouds their judgment. Story 46. Get wealth out of politics. The system we have creates perverse incentives and attracts the least desirable individuals. Repeal Citizens United. Punish those who accept bribes. Ensure that bribes are well defined. No more free dinners from donors or lobbyists. Make it illegal for any congressperson, Supreme Court judge, or president to trade stocks. They may have basic index funds that they can set or adjust at the beginning of their term, possibly once per year for lifetime appointments. These roles should still pay well. They should have a starting salary of at least $250,000 per year with a solid retirement plan. We want intelligent, hardworking individuals. Those types of people deserve to be compensated. If the government does not pay them, the private sector will, leaving government with less capable individuals. Additionally, tie congressional pay to the federal minimum wage. If Congress grants themselves a 10% raise, the minimum wage should increase by 10%. Story 47. It would require them to admit they were wrong and that they are part of a cult, recognize their failings, and understand why they were misled into supporting someone with a criminal record who has hurt others. It would necessitate personal growth and acceptance of their mistakes. So, it is unlikely to happen. Story 48. This is a complex problem that may never have a definitive solution. However, a significant issue underlying many of these challenges is a decline in social behavior. Various factors are undoubtedly exacerbating this rise in antisocial behavior, but it is clear that this is a downstream problem. The upstream solution lies with us. We all have the ability to be more friendly, which is largely what we need because it can help resolve many of the issues in society. When we start supporting one another and upholding liberty and justice for everyone, we begin to address the antisocial behavior by establishing social interaction as the norm. There is no single answer beyond promoting social engagement that can tackle as many of these problems. It is simply too complex for anyone to fully articulate the nuances, especially since experiences differ from person to person. However, having a community that acts as one, that looks out for each other and cares, will have the most profound impact on all of us. In a systematic approach, I believe we need to improve our justice system so it does not allow us to endure continued abuse from harmful individuals. We need to regulate fairly and effectively without being overly aggressive or hesitant. Regarding our overall unity, we should encourage cooperation rather than competition. We work better together. The idea that united we stand, divided we fall, is not just a phrase but a reality. I also support redefining socialism as it should properly be understood, a concept that embodies sociable qualities defining a just society. Liberty and justice should not appear foreign to socialism, nor should socialism be authoritarian. The government in a socialist state should act like a good big brother, looking out for you and collaborating with you, but without being overbearing or totalitarian. Socialism should be sociable. It should be compassionate, equitable, democratic, liberal, and just. It should also encompass a mixed economy. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.